Okay, we are recording. Thank you
All right.
everybody for coming. I'm Ronald Hietala. I'm an officer of the Washington Academy of Sciences. With me today is Joanne Horn, who is also going to participate in this interview. And we are pleased and honored to be interviewing Christopher Steele, Commander Christopher Steele, who is in the Navy with the rank of commander. And he is in charge of the MOMRP, Military Operational Medicine Research Program. And we're really pleased to have him with us today, and we're eager to get going and ask him some questions. Joanne, would you like to introduce yourself ever so briefly?
Sure. My name's Joanne Horn. I was actually trained as a microbiologist, mostly done research most of my life, but also worked in global health issues and did some work for DoD on a number of occasions in different areas, including microbial interactions with various materials and global health security and biodefense sort of issues. So I've worked in a lot of different areas and with a lot of different interesting people and groups. But I'm really happy to have Commander Steele here today because his program seems really interesting and sort of wide-ranging. So, Ron, did you want to start asking questions and then
No.
I'll take over? Or?
No, I have not.
No?
I'll kick it off.
All right.
Commander Steele, we're delighted to have you with us today. And I think many people might be surprised by the extent of the range of military medical research. Could you give us a picture of the research you oversee and perhaps connect it up with some of the goals and effects of the studies?
Absolutely. So obviously we have a responsibility to take care of the wounded, to rehabilitate, to treat with our really deep workforce in the DoD, uniformed government, civilian, and contractor medical support employees. But we have a lot of emphasis on preventive medicine. We have a lot of emphasis on understanding stressors on our individuals as they're happening, sometimes in real time. Contaminant exposures is an area that may not initially look like a medical problem, but certainly how our preventive medicine experts understand what to measure, how to document, how to share information, and how to go about putting forward a plan of reduced exposures that does align with the overall emphasis of the unit. In that case is combat effectiveness as well. So really when we talk about medical, there's things that we all know as medicine, and then the opportunity and the challenge is, of course, making that medicine work with the way our organizations have their own dynamics and really the mission itself. So there are a lot of things across the scope of military operational medicine that is about how you keep an individual prepared for or able to overcome a stressor that may not be ideal in its inception in the first place. So I have some slides. I don't know if you want to look at any particular ones or we can just talk around them.
Excellent. Could you give us some examples of how military medicine has affected the main goal of the military and results of their efforts?
Well, I think one of the more recent success stories our program has had for the Army, it's just a couple of just nuances. I'm a Navy officer, but I work at Fort Detrick at the U.S. Army's Medical Research Development Command. So I run an Army program for the Army, and also I run a program for the Joint, so Cross-Service Defense Health Agency, looking at all service needs. But one of the things that we've recently done a nice job of is rolling out an improved physical assessment tests for pre-accession individuals. So one of our challenges has always been when you want to allow for, in this case, primarily focused on female opportunities that are now available in combat arms scenarios as of 2016 and later, the Army realized it had no real accession standards to be able to ensure that from the beginning of training, individuals would be put in the right position to be able to compete without actually undue, physical hardship, so to speak. So we had been doing some work on really understanding the physical demands of certain jobs. And what we did for the Army is, okay, let's put in categories the primary physically demanding jobs and rank that. And so what we come up with is kind of 4 bands that describe the physical fitness needs to be able to perform in those jobs. So a good example is artillery. So if you have to, and I used to be an Army artilleryman back in the day, a long time ago, if you have to pick up a large weighted shell and move it and do this multiple times during a minute or an hour, depending on the operational conditions, there's a physical need to be able to do that. And what we don't want is, we want people to be able to perform for it, but what we've set up is really accession standards to say, if you want to compete for these types of jobs, here's the minimum physical criteria that you need to meet in order to adequately compete for those. So in those cases, hey, here's the standard. If you can show that standard before you come in, go to the job. But if you can't attain that minimum standard, then you should be able to choose from other jobs. And so really it's on the person to understand what's the minimum criteria they need to build their body toward, you prepare for. And it helps the Army kind of tertiarily put forward different levels of physical demands, just to be open and understanding about who can choose what job from their own perspective. So in those cases, it's certainly, there's anatomical, physiological changes that are important, but they're just having some really objective standards that talk about the likelihood of a person being able to come in and not get broken, so to speak, in training when they're exposed to physical challenges that they're really not prepared for. So those are the things that was one of the more key pieces. And from a medical perspective, clearly preventing those musculoskeletal injuries is a tremendous problem for us. Half of our musculoskeletal injuries are re-injuries. So when people do get an injury in the military, they don't just get over it simply. In many cases, it goes with them over time. So doing a better job of prevention and also treatment and rehabilitation is all within the scope of medical research and development.
I've been really impressed with the effects of medicine on military results. And I remember reading that in the Civil War in the United States, most of the deaths actually were due to illness and injury. And it seemed to involve the lack of availability of treatment. In the Second World War, in the First World War, the United States lost men to foot diseases because they were standing in trenches. And when the Gulf War of about 30 years ago went by, I was really amazed at the low number of deaths of American persons in charging another country with a large military. It was amazing. Would you like to comment on that?
Absolutely. So we've done a tremendous job of a few things. One is, immediate life-saving capabilities that go to the individual that may not be a medical person at all. So Stop the Bleed campaigns, you've probably seen these, they're really talking about the first thing you do is stopping exsanguinating hemorrhage. So I think we've done a great job institutionally of putting ideas about medical treatment, maybe when the person doesn't really consider it medical because they haven't been to medical school or they're not a medic. That's one thing that we've done a better job of. The second thing is some of the tools and technologies that we put far forward, improved devices that can control hemorrhage, advanced tourniquets, multiple types of tourniquets, certainly to be able to use far forward is a good example of better things that can stabilize. And then obviously the opportunity to get that individual out of theater, so from Afghanistan or Iraq in recent years to Germany continuity within 72 hours or several days, is a tremendous opportunity to get advanced care toward them. At the same time, putting forward surgical teams as far forward as possible, as close to the injury as possible, and logistically support them are also just tremendously important for what we've done over the past decade or so at least. And so those things have really changed the way we viewed the patient. Sometimes we talk about the golden hour. I don't think the medical people sometimes really want to talk about a golden hour, because sometimes we plan to minutes versus 59 or 61. But really the understanding that the quicker we can get a person to care is tremendously important for life-saving. And for us, we've done that. We've done that very effectively. And I think that the military's challenge now is if we have a near peer competitor, which is what we call our technologically equivalent we're concerned about we won't have that luxury of being able to remove people from combat, treating without disruption in the field. So the Department of Defense is very concerned about where we might have to regress in terms of being able to provide logistics, provide support, provide knowledge people far forward. So I think that this is really reminding us that there's no new problems under the sun, and sometimes we have to relearn the problems that we've already overcome in the past. So here it's really looking at the future fight and trying to understand if we can't easily get people out, what do we do about? So now there's lots of, obviously there are tools that we couldn't have dreamed of and effectively used, decades ago. So those capabilities as far forward as possible, a better decision about who has to be medically evac versus who could be stable. And then ultimately, if we can't provide logistical support, what do we do in those scenarios? So even though we've gotten past the World War II kind of scenarios or even World War I scenarios, it doesn't mean that they're always gone, and we still have the environmental exposures. We still have, water access as a future problem that we need to understand how to best overcome and not rely on it when it certainly won't be there.
Good. Thank you.
Steele, I guess I've got the share screen so I'm going to go ahead and put your slides up.
Yeah, maybe just slide 6. So slide 6.1 it's not too complicated. I just typically like to talk about what do we mean when we talk about different aspects of medical investment. And again, I put a bunch of slides in here as backup that we can talk to any of them or none of them, or we can talk around them all. It's whatever you guys want to do. We do have active investments in. For us, we're trying now for better kind of cross-cutting initiatives. So resilience building capabilities that address all of those kinds of challenges. Sometimes in the past, I think we've historically treated them independently, but we do know that there are a lot of common opportunities to improve resilience that affect them all. So that's one general direction that we're going in. And then we often partner with the VA or the NIH about improved treatments. For us, psychological health conditions, disorders in the service is about, we think about 20% of active duty service members have some disorder. In some cases, we bring it in from where we came before we joined, and then clearly, challenging our individuals both in combat operations and in routine moves and other types of career-oriented challenges does weigh down on the force. So better access to care, better opportunities to talk about those problems so that we can hopefully reduce stigma. These are a number of directions that we're trying to improve on. But we've had a couple VA DoD partnerships on consortiums to alleviate PTSD, other consortiums on suicide reductions itself. So again, we look at the cutting edge science that's out there and then really try to figure out what's going to work in our scenarios. And in many cases, people that begin treatments don't actually complete them. So why it's occurring, and what are the things that we can do to better tailor it to our use cases. So so very important directions for all of our service members, whether they're brand new recruits or career individuals. And again, embedding providers has helped with the ability to talk about and even document those challenges. And it's on us, on the research and development community, is to determine what's next. Is it AI machine learning capabilities that can detect a problem before it arises? Is it a wearable tech that may suggest that some individuals have a problem when they don't necessarily want to take time off to go see medical? And again, in a non-research world, just putting those individuals closer to the unit has made an improvement on the way individuals talk about those issues, and not treating psychological health as a separate asterisk on the rest of your career, but that it should be integrated and taken advantage of from the way a psychological health challenge is thrown at our people.
Commander, from my personal experience, I never served in the military, but I have 3 brothers who did, and it was really quite amazing how their character and confidence developed when they were in the military, and their mental health improved. You know, when they went in, they were stumbling around looking for a path in life, and when they came out, they were on a path and they were able to choose a path. It was an astonishing difference. So as a training officer, former training officer, I'm pleased to be able to say that training is good for a person's mental health.
Maybe go to slide 18, 19. Those are my 2 on psychological health, and again, it doesn't show you specific investments, but I think it is important that we recruit people from all walks of life with all kinds of prior backgrounds, and at the end of the day, it's a good opportunity for them to kind of reset and how do people's prior values mesh with the current and future values as they become uniformed and stay in units, stay in the service over time. So this is where some challenges may exist before they get in. They may be unearthed when they do kind of train alongside people, and we do recruit what might be called a high-risk behavioral health population. I mean, it's 17 to 25-year-olds are our primary initial recruits, and we're all still figuring things out at the time. So we recognize that there are a lot of heterogeneity in those people, and again, what can we do to make sure that we have a better feel for how they're dealing with those training exposures, and hopefully they're being responsive rather than being degraded over time in terms of the physical and psychological health. So I think the way we talk about psychological health as an example is better. The way we talk about things like sexual harassment, sexual assault, substance abuse, again, it's more of a what would you expect out of your unit, your buddy, your teammate, your et cetera, whatever you want to call it, and treating people with respect no matter your background and experiences, if they were narrow or not. I think those are pieces for the DoD to help push the importance of taking care of yourself and your unit. And those are ultimately the positive psychological health building capabilities that we like to impart.
Yeah, excellent. What an incredible organization. I mean, and it's so huge and expansive in its missions. I had a couple of questions for you. So you have a really wide portfolio. What do you consider to be the priority areas of research?
It's a little challenging to talk about individual priorities sometimes, because we do try to, again, we're a research and development community, so we typically don't actually do anything directly. Like we hand off what we think is an important change, or we hand off a product that could be used by someone else, and then it's up to them to kind of make sure it's hardened, it fits within the system. A good example is we may have efforts in the DoD that do, understanding from a precision medicine perspective, who's likely to have a psychological health issue. Suicide's a good example. But implementing that recommendation is hard because you could create other issues from it. So I think one of the things I'd like to easily state is that we have output to a lot of different communities, and they individually might say that what we're doing for them is a high priority. Hopefully that's true. And then because we do a number of them, we separate them out. We have about 8 portfolio managers that work underneath me, and each PhD person is their job, and our job ultimately is to take needs of the service and translate those into research and development opportunities. So this is where we publish to industry and academia, and even in our government labs. Hey, we have this specific problem. I'd like you to do these things to help us understand it. Sometimes we know what we want, or we think we do. But also there's where, if it's in research and development, we really want new ideas to be brought in so we can understand maybe this is not the best idea out in town, but it really fits in our system, and the way our people will accept it is maybe much better than the average population, or vice versa. It fits well out in town, but when we go to translate it for our people, maybe they're already at a point where it doesn't help them. You can think fitness. Our population is, generally speaking, on average, certainly healthier than the average population. We have groups that are uber healthy, and then we have others that are maybe a little bit more broadly like the civilian population. So here it's looking across our performing organizations, and also our needs statements, people, and saying what do they need. Clearly for us, the psychological health treatments is an important area. How do we do that far forward in a way that, right now, to diagnose PTSD, you need to be outside of the stressors over time, but there's certainly an acute stress response that people get. And so how do you identify it from a non-medical perspective? I just see it in my buddy, or how do you see it in yourself, or how do you improve treatments in those scenarios? For us, that's probably as critical as ever, particularly if we can't get those people out of the far forward scenarios and we have to live with them, so to speak, in the unit. Just moving them to additional levels of care is important. And this is true for all of medicine right now. If we can't get people, can't get access to them, can't get logistics to them, and can't get them out, then we're very concerned about prolonged field care in that regard. And so that's not just a healthcare perspective, it's a psychological health perspective, but it's certainly a perspective for any loss of life potential, or limb, blood products, et cetera. So I think the biggest concern that we face right now is what do we do about those scenarios we have casualty or pain you can't our orders when we've been historically used to doing that. So that's a broad direction, and for us, it's probably far forward psychological health management is one of our key pieces.
Mm-hmm. I know my dad.
And then my personal field is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say my personal field is sleep and circadian rhythm. Sorry, I got a delay. my personal field is sleep and circadian rhythm. So, we've been pretty good at reminding people that 7 to 8 hours sleep is a good idea, if not better than a good idea. But our folks that are younger, that usually caffeinate, that aren't necessarily getting, say, 7 to 8 hours sleep. Well, right now they would be excluded from most sleep studies. So the body of literature on how people respond to sleep is either the clinically disrupted or those that are not really fitting our workforce. So I think we're very interested in novel mechanisms of sleep, understanding not just in the short term, but in the midterm, what are the impacts on our workforce, and how does sleep relate directly to brain health as we degrade, even for choices of staying up just because you want to stay up, or having the enemy or your own unit drive the fact that you don't get optimal same time of day sleep. I think that's a problem that the general public is going in also. And so for us, having a relatively young and healthy workforce doing that is helpful from a research perspective, but it's important for us to, in a timely perspective, to get improvements for the way that sleep degrades both physical and psychological conditions.
Yeah.
Sleep is an amazing phenomenon, and it's not very well understood, but every animal, as far as we know sleeps, and human beings spend roughly 1/3 of their time on Earth sleeping. So it's obviously very, very important, and lack of sleep is a very serious problem. It's possible to make a person confess to a murder by keeping him from sleeping, or her. It's an amazing thing. I'm glad you're working on it.
Yeah,
we actually have a lot of partnerships in industry and academia, and here, honestly, we've gone a long way in the past really 5 years, but certainly 10 years in terms of wearable devices, what they can tell or not tell about people. And I think right now, like even non-complicated things, like is the person not sleeping because they choose not to, or their schedule doesn't allow? If you could just have devices that doesn't take extra time for the person to say, I'm not sleeping because I psychologically or physiologically can't sleep. That kind of information is actually potentially really the gold standard opportunity, because then you get earlier stage treatments that can hopefully reduce degradation that occurs over time. And I think we don't really screen people for sleep disorders before they come into the service. They certainly become screened over time, because if you can't sleep, then it's going to show up at some time, particularly
Yeah.
as you restrict people's sleep. On the other hand, cognitive behavior, because sometimes when you treat people, you actually compress the sleep. So it's very possible that we're actually improving people's sleep in earlier stage training, because we're doing a structure on them where they haven't been. So a big public health opportunity to understand more about sleep. And from our perspective, sleep probably does 8 things in humans at least. And then, how do you help each of those things occur if you don't get the consistent, easy opportunities for consolidated sleep over time? It's a big problem. And then for those of us that are aging, that's everybody, we don't get the sleep that we used to. So just understanding that process and what we can do about it is really right in front of us. So.
Yeah, really some fascinating areas of research. Did you want to speak a little bit to, maybe you want to sort of mention your BAA and how people can access, the areas of investigation that you guys are engaged in?
Absolutely. So there's a couple easy ways. So just to be completely maybe more transparent, so we're not the NIH, but we're kind of like the NIH, where we have investments for external opportunities. We have internal organizations that also do R&D, and then certainly partnerships are another opportunity there. So for external opportunities, we do have a broad agency announcement that gets published every year. I think it's a 5-year one now, but it gets updated as necessary. I can send links. They're on these slides if you want to share them. So MRDC has a broad agency announcement that typically says, hey, listen, we're interested in a lot of things. We try not to get too specific there, because we don't want to prescribe exactly what we get. We do want new opportunities to come in. We've done more work in the past couple of years with prototype consortiums, where we've basically said, hey, we need things that are ready to roll out, even if we're not quite ready for them to roll out. So that there's a consortium called MTEC, Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium. I think it's MTech-SC is the website. But again, there we're asking for things that can be rolled out in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. Those things are a little bit higher on the transitional phase than we would normally do, but again, it's a good partnership opportunity. It's where externals can come in with leveraging dollars, and again, we can run quicker. They're called OTAs, so they're transactional authorities. Those kinds of governmental agreements really started at Sputnik, when the federal government can really build partnerships in real time. This is one for medical. There's some in other areas, but those are two broad agency announcement and MTech are two kind of R&D opportunity advertisements that show up, and most get published when we have formal calls for particular program announcements as well. So at this command, there's a congressionally directed medical research program. They have very broad topic areas, and they also help us execute on external grants and contracts. So CDMRP is one where you can usually see all the program announcements that we put out.
Okay, thank you for that. And how about collaborations between, for example, academia and industry and the military? Are you guys interested in pursuing those kinds of efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't think that we should do ourselves. We recognize that we all come from an NIH model for the most part when we train as PhDs, but certainly understanding what industry partners can help us rapidly accelerate is clearly important to us. So the MTech Consortium is one that helps us do that. But I think the biggest problem that we face is it's hard to tell people exactly what we're doing right now, in which case it's really helpful for our internal labs or clinical sites to be a partner, because they can really help where we think we are right now. And it may be that, hey, we think we solved this, and bright ideas outside say, no, you haven't even scratched the surface, or vice versa. There may be things that we're working on that's ready to transition, and someone doesn't easily see that out in town, and they may think they have the solution, or they want to start on a solution, and we may be close to that story. So I think that external partnerships are for at least those reasons, if not also to make sure that we really work for people that don't want to talk about medical or don't want to do research. It's the people that are downrange. So the quicker we can get a solution to help those people out, the better. So we'd like to get out of some of these areas for the right reasons because we've solved those problems. But having said that, we do have legacy areas that still haven't been completely solved yet. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think we're just about out of time. We're probably a little over. And sorry about that, but everything you said is just really relevant and interesting. So excellent. Thanks.
We are coming to the end, but I want to give you one more opportunity. And I don't know about you, but when I'm interviewed, I'm always a little worried, and I want to give you this opportunity. There may be a question or two that you wanted us to ask that we did not ask. Would you like to answer one or two that we didn't ask?
Honestly, the more people get to speak about the fact that we recognize we don't do things perfectly. We need more help. So I think typically when I give these talks at an academic university or with government partners, it's the beginning of discussions. And with that is if there's content area that your people are interested in working on, we're happy to take a quick call and discuss it a little bit or an email. We at the very least can say, hey, here's the likely route of proposals. Or here's the people doing that work. So for me, it's just the beginning of these discussions, and then there'll be a lot of things that people may be interested in. Infectious disease, I don't do this. Combat casualty care treatment in the field, I typically don't do that. So there's other organizations that do those things and other people. So happy to hand them off, and I hope that anything that people think we are not doing, we are doing at some level. And if things that are brand new opportunities for us to understand, then those kinds of engagements are important. So helping identify what we're currently doing work and what the likely opportunities are moving forward with a new investment is that's my job. So happy to follow up later with people, and we have a candy store of opportunities for R&D. But we also have communities that don't really want fancy solutions. They just want to solve that and move on to the next one. So we talk about organizations where it can be done. The hardest part for me is to say, hey, that's an important area. We have enough solutions there. We need to go to the next priority. That's not easy to talk about, and also not easy to translate, because it looks like we don't care about that problem anymore. Well, it maybe enough solution that the next issue, then maybe people understand. So all that to say, the way we translate solution has to fit in our organization and our organization's needs. So no easy answers there, but happy to continue discussions within your team about what some of the real opportunities are moving forward.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for
yes,
that.
Thank you so much. We
All
very
right.
much appreciate your being with us today and helping us understand what you do better.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for your service, Commander Steele.
Anytime.